Oh, sorry about the previous video. It was pretty bad, like the internet connection was pretty bad, so couldn't really complete it. So we are looking at SBL's exam specimen from September 2018. So it's about DCS. It's a IT-based company, right? And then it has some manufacturing as well, and then it provides some other facilities as well, such as technical support. Okay. So we were looking at future outlook. So what are the challenges and uncertainties is DCS likely to encounter in pursuing its strategy, and what are the potential implications for its business model and future performance? DCS currently manufactures approximately 50% of all data communication components used in its own products. The rest of the complete components, including semiconductors and microprocessors, are bought in from two multinational global suppliers. Okay, currently manufactures approximately 50%, right? The rest of the complete components, semiconductors and microprocessors, are bought in from multinational company, right? These suppliers have since 2006 become the key players in the market through a succession of acquisitions and mergers, where previously there were many more suppliers and all with a much smaller market share. Recently, serious production problems have resulted from periodic component shortages from these key suppliers, creating significant delays in manufacturing, assembly, and customer deliveries. Okay, so serious production problems. So that will be for our industry as well, right? So since they have already acquired the other competitors, so that might be happening for the other players as well. And then it is affecting the sales, and the sales is for 40% of the sales, right? So one of our recently acquired OEM customers accounts for 40% of the 40% of our sales in this area. So marketing forecast for 2016 and beyond indicates stronger growth from the supply and sales support for specialized IT management services to currently installed networks in domestic financial sector, rather than from, okay, so stronger growth from supply and sales support. Okay, from IT based thingy rather than from manufacture of components to OEMs, or for installation of new networks to large companies. Okay, so no, not new installation as well. The other potential growth area is in providing cloud computing and big data analytics capability to the SME sector, including DCS. There are currently only 3 companies which provide this specialist service in Biden. So strategy and resource allocation. Where does DCS want to go, and how does it intend to get there? As executive directors, we need an appropriate strategy for the next 3 to 5 years. On our current trends, we are looking at approximately 10% year-on-year decline in our revenues for the next 3 years. Okay, appropriate strategy for 3 to 4 years. Current trends, 10% decline. At the forthcoming board meeting, we need to discuss and decide on the best strategy for us as a company. We need to decide between strategies. Do we realign the business to make it less reliant on high volumes, low margin component segments, and relocate resources from data communication segment into this high added value sector of network management and support? Whether from production or into this, where there is higher margin. Through this, we need to further exploit technologies such as cloud computing and in particular big data analytics, which seem to offer lower cost data storage, better focus of consumer preferences, and ability to develop more bespoke products and services. Alternatively, we should focus on our core capability in the data communication communications components, manufacturing area, where we have the expertise, experience, and where most of our turnover is currently generated. So which strategies? So conclusion, DCS board should now evaluate the risks and opportunities and take a key decisions. DCS also needs to consider how it will implement its chosen strategy and how it will finance it. See further information down below. Forecast tangible benefits and results and cost resulting from various potential scenarios. In 2015, we have estimated that the net cash contribution from data communication components segment of the business is 1.55, and the net cash contribution from the network supply and support is 0.85 taxes. The expectation is that total cash flow contribution will continue to decline by about 10% each year if we do nothing. The refocus strategy. We can implement this strategy by reorganizing our sales and support teams, making manufacturing cost efficiencies, and targeting our data communications components customers more effectively. If we are successful, we estimate that we can at least maintain the total cash contribution of DCS at the current level of 2.4 million for the next 3 years. Okay, so if we are successful, we estimate we can at least maintain the total cash contribution of TCS at the current level of 2.4 million. A refocus strategy, right? And then realignment strategy is with the realignment of the business towards the network supply and support segment, the net contribution from the communications component sector is forecasted to decline by 10% per year for the following 3 years. This is regardless of how the net cash contributions from the network and IT systems support business is expected to grow under any of our assumptions. This is regardless of how the net cash contributions from the network and IT support is expected to grow. Okay. So forecast annual fixed cost and working capital savings from the decline in data communication manufacturing area are expected to be $0.35 million from general cost. Okay, so it's savings, right? Annual fixed cost and working capital savings from the decline in data communication. This from general cost and will also result in annual tax cost savings of carbon tax savings of 0.15 million, giving a total saving of 500,000 per annum for the next 3 years, 2016 to 2018. Note that this forecast savings are independent of which growth forecast below emerges. Table 1 shows the projected growth in cash flow from the network supply and support segment in the next 3 years, the additional fixed cost of this investment, and the savings to be made in data communication division should the realignment and additional investment take place. Table 1. Alternative growth forecasts for DCS company under the realignment strategy. So additional cash contribution from the network support business will grow by 25%. We will grow by 15% for the next 3 years from 2014. Okay, so 3 scenarios, probabilities for growth 25, 15, and 10, right? So probability of growth materializing is also it's high over here. And then after that, forecast annual increase in cash fixed cost is this much, this much. Annual savings from decline in data communications segment. So that was from the general cost and tax savings, right? So it will be pretty much same for all of these years. So these are the benefits, okay, or increase in cash fixed cost. Okay, so let's look at the evaluation of strategy choices facing DCS company. You asked your colleague Freddie Lithium to evaluate the alternative strategies based on the information contained in the October board report. Freddie has now given you his work in this spreadsheet below. Okay. Okay. So total for strategy 1. So in case of refocus strategy, what we were looking at was that we would reorganize our sales and support teams, make manufacturing cost efficiencies, and target our data communication components customers more effectively, right? So based on that, so we will be maintaining same cash flow, right? That's what we were talking about. So that's what he has done as well. So in case of realignment strategy, so what he has done is that 25% growth rate, 15%, 10% probability is there, right? In 2016, in 2017, in 2018. Same thing over here as well. And then expected value from network growth. In this figure, it's this figure, 10% decline from 1.55 million, right? 1.55, okay. So these are the decrease in value, right? And then total cash contributions from strategy is 2 plus 3, okay. So this plus 3 has been added, so that is there. And then incremental cash contribution is 4 minus 1. Okay, so this minus this. Incremental cash contribution for these 3 years. So additional annual fixed cost based on expected growth. So if it is 25, 15, 10, so these will be the additional cost, right? Expected value of additional fixed cost is this. So after that, that's been there. And then cash fixed cost savings, it's over here. Net additional cash fixed costs is also given. Incremental cash contributions from strategy 5. It's given. Incremental cash fixed cost 8. It's given over here, right? And incremental net cash contributions from strategy 2 compared with strategy 1. What did you do? What did you do? What did you do? Okay. This minus this. Cumulative payback period 2 years 11 months. Okay. So what do we have over here? Again, exhibit number 6. So notes from middle management focus group meeting. Having read the integrated reporting data and studying the transcript of the conversation you had with Java Peria, you needed more background information about some of the key issues that have come to your attention. You therefore invited a representative team of middle managers to a focus group meetings and asked them key questions from which the following comments were noted. Sorry about that. So, quote number 1. So, what were the things that I had noted? From a management accountant in finance directorate, when undertaking capital investment appraisal, we have a strict policy of evaluating investment or project over a maximum of 3 years and to ignore cash flows beyond that date. Okay. So to ensure that any investment we make must pay back within that time period. This ensures that we don't accept. This ensures that we don't accept unviable projects. Okay. Maximum of 3 years. Is that even an investment? Quote number 2 from an engineer in the network supply division. So what really annoys me is the fact that in 2011, the CEO and HR director introduced an annual staff survey. Although they promised anonymity. So it's like the person won't know your identity. That's what it basically means. Sorry for the pronunciation. The survey required us to give details of our age, ethnicity, length of service, and department in which we are employed. Age, ethnicity, length of service, and department. I was called to the meeting last year by the production manager who implicitly threatened me and made comments such as, if you don't like working here, why not look for another job? It was very clear to me that this meeting was private and was to be kept confidential. I was not permitted to discuss the existence or outcomes of this meeting with other members of the staff, or there will be consequences. Quote number 3 from a technician in data communication components division. I felt the staff satisfaction survey was designed in a way which dissuaded negative feedbacks and key issues known to be of concern to staff obtained from informal grapevine were deliberately omitted from the survey questions. Okay. In addition, the way the results were presented by managers and visual graphics used seemed to play down the negative feedback and concentrated only on the positive factors. For example, emphasis was made of how well staff regarded their own performance and that of the team members, which seemed to have more favorable feedbacks compared with other questions about confidence in the leadership of the company. I don't think this presented the true picture of our feelings. Quote 4 from sales support engineer. We are rushed off our feet due to key staff leaving. Our the turnover has also gone up, right? In the thing we can see it away. Where did it say? So it is in the specimen number 2, number 3 in the integrated report, right? So it has increased. Who is smartphone over here? Oh yeah. Okay. So it is difficult to get around to all our customers. This means we have a difficulty getting our orders in on time and are often late to appointments. Although sales productivity might be improving, but fewer of us are covering a greater geographical area. Customers are not as satisfied as they used to be and are making more complaints. Okay, this is the important thing that this fellow has told. So since the customer complaints have risen as well, we can verify his statement with the figures as well, right? So after this meeting, you went back to the office and scheduled a meeting in the following week with Danny and Freddie to start preparing the consultancy report findings for DCS company. After this meeting, you went back to your office, scheduled a meeting in the following week to start preparing the consultancy report findings for DCS company. Okay, so let's look at the model answers as well. So SBL, Strategic Business Leader. So in the strategic professional examinations, it is not always possible to publish suggested answers which comprehensively cover all the valid points which candidates might make. Credit will be given to candidates for points not included in the suggested answers, but which nevertheless are relevant to the requirements. In addition, in this integrated case study examination, candidates may reintroduce topics made in another questions or part of questions as long as these are made in a specific context of the requirements of the question being answered. The suggested answers presented below inevitably give much more detail than that would be expected from most candidates under examination conditions. Suggested answers presented below inevitably give more detail, okay, and include most of the obvious points evidenced from the case information. The answers are therefore intended to provide a structure of the approach required from candidates and cover the range and depth of knowledge relating to each task, which might be demonstrated by the most well prepared and able candidates. They are also intended to support revision and tuitions for future examinations. A background section of consultancy report. 1 mark per relevant point for discussing any relevant environmental models such as Porter's 5 forces. Pestle. Okay, so let's look at that. Not exhibit. I mean, let's look at the requirement as well. First of all, analysis of industry and market which DCS companies competing in, right? Evaluation of overall performance of DCS company between 2012 and 2015 from an integrated reporting perspective. Okay, so the first part of this report analysis DCS company market and the industry using Porter's 5 forces model, which is bargaining power of buyers, bargaining power of suppliers, threats of new entrants, threats from substitutes, and rivalry between competitors, right? So bargaining power of buyers is that DCS is competing in two markets: in the data communication component market, which is more mature and where it has less than 1% of the market share. It is a supplier of marginal significance despite 65% of its gross profit or cash contributions being generated in this segment. Its customer in the neighboring single market, 30% of within its own currency are likely to demand low prices. Of course, they are going to do it. Its customer in the neighboring single market, right? And high quality and reliability. They may not accept late delivery of orders. It appears that alternative sources of supply are readily available and that switching costs are relatively low. Multinational OEMs have significant bargaining power in this market, particularly OEMs which account for 40% of DCS, data communication components sales. So in the second market, where the network management systems are supplied to mainly domestic SMEs and a few larger companies, the buyers appear to have less bargaining power. DCS is catering for each customer's specific needs, and so its solution is to some degree a bespoke solution. This makes it harder for buyers to compare products and prices of potential suppliers. Alternative sources of supply are much more difficult to find as there are only three companies, including DCS, in this specialist marketplace. So, bargaining power of suppliers. Although DCS manufactures 50% of all components used in its data communication products, reducing its overall reliance on suppliers in this sector, it seems unlikely that DCS will be able to exert much influence on its suppliers, which provide the other 50%. As relatively small players in the data communications market, the company does not have the power to exert buyer pressure on its two large suppliers, either in terms of price or delivery. Current problems associated with the delivery of components are having a significant impact on the company's ability to meet customers' deadline and expectations. So, suppliers of financial capital, namely lenders, have gained more bargaining power as TCS has had to borrow more to sustain their recent growth. If labor is seen as a supplier, then evidence suggests that TCS is in a relatively weak position, particularly since there has been a limited trade union membership since 2006. There has been limited trade union membership since 2006. However, the union members are mainly in the data communication components divisions, where employee remuneration and employment rights are already compliant with Paidin's national employment laws, right? Okay, the scenario also indicates the difficulty of finding high caliber network staff with DCS small size and location, making it difficult to attract key personnel necessary for future growth in this sector. So, threats from new entrants. DCS is operating in an industry where the cost of entry are significant because it is capital and knowledge intensive. Economies of scale compel new entrants to enter at significant output levels or suffer a cost disadvantage. Further, the need to offer comprehensive after-sales support, although a problem for DCS, does not create a significant barrier to new entrants, right? That's not a barrier for new entrant because only in the manufacturing thing it's pretty much high, right? So finally, the exit costs and barriers such as industry-specific knowledge, skills, and assets reduce the attractiveness of the market to new entrants. Okay, so threats from substitutes. So this is evidence that large, successful, high-technology companies are particularly vulnerable to ignoring the challenge from disruptive new technologies, which can replace the need for certain high-technology products and services overnight. From disruptive new technologies. However, relatively small size of DCS may give it a competitive advantage in its ability to respond quickly and flexibly to change, as long as it can attract the right caliber of expertise to achieve this. So, rivalry among competitors. So very different levels of competitions are being experienced in the two marketplaces TCS is operating in. It is clear that high volume, low margin component business offers intensive intense competition with buyers who are able to use their size to extract favorable prices. TCS only has 1% of this market. The ability of TCS to generate better market shares and volumes through product innovation in this market seems highly unlikely. The intensity of rivalry in the network management systems is significantly less in this specialist market. TCS is dealing with a smaller number of large and medium-sized users designing products specific to their needs. In Porter's terms, TCS is adopting a focused differentiation strategy. In this low volume, high margin markets, the emphasis has to be on attracting the volume sides of the business, but at the same time making sure that they have the resources to attract and support new customers. Okay, so we have done that as well. So an evaluation of the overall performance of TCS company between 2012 and 2015, right? Okay, so it's based on third integrated report, right? Okay. The following is an evaluation of the performance of TCS against the six capitals of integrated reporting and how these are being transformed at DCS between 2012 and 2015, right? So financial capital, manufacturing capital, human capital, social and relationship capital, intellectual capital, and natural capital as well, carbon footprint. Forgot about that. Okay, let's see about financial capital. The financial capital shows revenue reaching a peak in 2014 before falling away in 2015. Although 2014 was a record year for revenues, increased cost of sales meant that the gross profit declined. Okay, so it has declined, right? So as you can see, significantly, the gross profit margin has declined every year in the period under consideration. And the reason for this needs to be investigated. The rapid fall in 2015 suggests the operating costs have not been brought under control to reflect the sudden sales decline. In 2015, although DCS seems to have made reduction in overhead cost, finance costs have increased despite the fall in revenue. Finance cost has increased, leading to a progressive decline in net profit margin in the year under consideration, right? As you can see, the overall financial picture of this company, which has failed to control its core operating and finance cost, has it generated increases in revenue until 2014, and as revenue fell in 2015, finance costs are increasing as a proportion of net profit before tax, as shown below. NBIT, how much is it? It's 1.25. Manufacturing capital. Working manufacturing capital seems to be reducing. This is confirmed by the forward contracts order book. Okay, and then this has fallen from 3505 in 2012 to 2500, which will require fewer components, work in progress, and finished products needed at the factory. It is also clear that Capital budgeting and investment is slowing from 10% to 7% of the turnover over the period. As you can see, anything else? Anything else? R&D. R&D is also falling and is at 3% of the turnover in 2015 compared with 6% in 2012, which is 50% decline. This statistics indicate a clear depletion of manufacturing capital at TCS. Human capital. Sales revenue per employee has increased. Okay. From productivity perspective, right? So DCS seems to be seeing a depletion of high value human capital and morale as maybe morale may be seen as low. Recruitment and successful succession planning seem to be poorly planned and coordinated, leading to insufficient skilled people being recruited or promoted to replace staff either leaving the company or retiring early. This is just over 15% of the fewer staffs at TCS in 2015 compared with 2012. So, however, human capital have performed reasonably well from productivity perspective, as I have already told you. The sales support element of human capital is not performing well. However, the number of late contracts has doubled since 2012. As a percentage of total orders and existing contracts increased from 1.5 to 3.4, right? And doubled exactly. So social and relationship capital, what has happened to it? Basically been depleted, right? Within the company, and one of the ways this can be assessed is by using staff satisfaction survey. Staff satisfaction survey. So this case indicates that employee satisfaction has been declining in between 2012 and 2015. The increase in trade union membership may be a symptom of this. The case indicates that the survey measures such aspects as confidence in leadership, opinions about personal growth, and individual well-being. Every year since the survey was launched, the satisfaction rating have fallen by more than 15%. So, in case of intellectual capital, another area where DCS seems to be failing in its maintenance and transformation of intellectual capital, there has been depletion of intellectual capital through skilled staff being either underutilized or leaving the company. This can be related to two areas: staff turnover and research and development. Clearly, the stock of intellectual capital is closely correlated to the stock of human and cultural capital. DCS seems to be depleting all three of these, and its staff turnover has increased by 150% since 2012. And natural capital. It is clear that DCS has a growing carbon footprint, and it is unable to identify where precisely in its value chain the carbon footprint is most problematic. The information in the case shows that overall carbon emissions are increasing. Carbon emissions have risen by 1 by 3 since 2012. 21 by third, right? one third, you could say. The case clearly indicates that the main cause of the carbon footprint is in the data communication components manufacturing division. This is already a high volume, and relatively low margin sector of the business, which will be subject to additional carbon taxes under the government proposals. In case of data communication components manufacturing division, right? Because of high volume and relatively lower margin, which is already there. So if it is subjected to additional carbon tax, this is likely to be greater carbon cost with this sector, as a significant proportion of the components are exported to nearby continental trading community. So that will again impact the net profit margin, right? So conclusion is that TCS needs to be aware of the dynamics relating to its market and industry, particularly the power of key customers and over-reliance on two main suppliers. It must be aware of and manage the threats from substitutes and new entrants in its two main business segments. On the company performance against the six capital of integrated reporting, TCS performance in several areas is weak and indicates a strategic drift which will need to be addressed, right? So the next thing that we will need to also talk about is okay, so that's question number B, right? Key weaknesses of current corporate governance. Okay, what we'll do is that we will do that in another part. So since it has already been long, so you guys might have been bored already, so I'll continue that in the next part. Okay, so I'll see you in the next part. Until then, bye bye.